The old clock on the wall ticked past midnight as Rosa Mendez pushed her cleaning cart down the empty hallway of the mathematics building. Most nights, the university campus felt like another world, quiet and peaceful, so different from the bustling activity of daytime. She liked it this way. The silence gave her space to think. Rosa adjusted her plain blue uniform and tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear as she unlocked the door to Professor Wilson's office. At 42, her hands showed signs of years of hard work, slightly rough from cleaning chemicals and with a small burn scar on her right thumb from her previous job at a diner. But those same hands moved with surprising grace as she emptied trash bins and wiped down surfaces. The professor's desk was cluttered with papers covered in symbols and numbers that most people would find impossible to understand. Rosa paused, her cleaning cloth hovering over the wooden surface as her eyes traced the equations. Something about them pulled at her mind, like a half-remembered song. She hadn't planned to become a cleaning lady at one of the country's top universities. Life had simply worked out that way. When Rosa was 16, her father got sick, and she dropped out of high school to help support the family. She had always been good with numbers, the best in her class, but dreams of college disappeared as reality took over. Still, that love of patterns and puzzles never left her. Now, 26 years later, she spent her evenings cleaning the offices and classrooms of brilliant mathematicians while secretly absorbing everything she could from their work. Rosa finished cleaning the office and moved onto the main conference room, where someone had left the lights on. The massive whiteboard that covered one wall was filled with scribbles and crossed-out equations. In the center was a problem written in red marker with a circle around it. She recognized it immediately. For the past 3 weeks, this same problem had appeared everywhere in the department, on whiteboards and notebooks, on scraps of paper left on desks. Rosa had overheard enough conversations to know this was something special, something that had the entire mathematics world buzzing. The Keller-Reeves conjecture, she whispered to herself, reading the title written above the problem. Rosa set down her cleaning supplies and picked up a blue marker. She wouldn't erase anything, she never did, but sometimes, when alone like this, she would work through problems herself, then take a photo with her old flip phone before wiping away her work. Her fingers moved almost on their own, writing out the beginning of a solution path she'd been thinking about for days. The symbols flowed from the marker as naturally as if she were writing a grocery list. In these moments, she felt most alive, connected to something larger than herself, a world of pure logic and beauty that didn't care about degrees or titles. "What are you doing?" The sharp voice made Rosa jump. The marker clattered to the floor as she spun around to see Dr. Chen, a young professor whose office she cleaned on Mondays and Thursdays. He stood in the doorway, arms crossed over his wrinkled shirt, looking at her with narrowed eyes. "I'm sorry," Rosa said quickly, bending to pick up the marker. "I was just playing around with things you don't understand." Dr. Chen stepped into the room, glancing at what she'd written on the board. His eyebrows shot up. "Did you copy this from somewhere?" Rosa felt her face grow hot. "No, sir. I was just thinking about the problem and..." "Thinking about it?" He gave a short laugh. "This is advanced number theory. People study for years to understand the basics of what's on this board." She wanted to explain that she had been studying, in her own way, for years. That she borrowed outdated textbooks from the library book sale. That she stayed up late watching free online lectures. That the department's recycling bin had been her unofficial education, filled with discarded papers and notes she would rescue and pore over at home. Instead, she said nothing. Dr. Chen's expression softened slightly. "Look, I appreciate your interest, but this isn't something you can just pick up. The mathematicians working on this problem have PhDs and decades of experience. It's not..." He paused, searching for words. "It's not like following a recipe or balancing a checkbook." Rosa nodded, keeping her eyes down. She'd heard similar things before. People always assumed she couldn't possibly understand complex mathematics because of her job, her lack of formal education, her whole life. "I'll finish cleaning now," she said quietly. Dr. Chen lingered a moment longer, looking between Rosa and the board. "Just don't erase anything, okay? There's important work there." After he left, Rosa continued cleaning in silence, avoiding looking at the whiteboard. The brief confidence she'd felt minutes earlier had vanished, replaced by a familiar heaviness. She finished the room quickly and moved on, wanting to be anywhere else. The next morning, Rosa sat at her small kitchen table with a cup of coffee, surrounded by stacks of paper. Her tiny apartment wasn't much, just one bedroom, a bathroom, and this combined kitchen-living area, but it was home. Sunlight filtered through the thin curtains, casting a warm glow over her work. Every available surface was covered with mathematics. Some papers were wrinkled from being rescued from trash cans. Others were notebooks she'd bought from the dollar store, filled with her neat handwriting. A few tattered textbooks formed wobbly towers on the floor. Rosa took a sip of coffee and looked at the problem she'd copied from the conference room whiteboard. The Keller-Reeves conjecture. Even the name sounded important. From what she'd gathered from overheard conversations, the conjecture involved a special type of number pattern that had applications in everything, from internet security to predicting how diseases spread. More importantly, whoever solved it would win substantial prize money and recognition from the Preston Foundation. The department had been in a frenzy ever since famous mathematician Dr. Reeves had visited 3 weeks ago to discuss the problem. Rosa had cleaned up after the reception, but hadn't been allowed to attend the actual talk. Still, she'd found the slide printouts left behind and studied them carefully. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Rosa quickly gathered her papers into a messy pile and covered them with a newspaper before answering. Her neighbor, Mrs. Patel, stood in the hallway with a warm smile and a plate of homemade samosas. "Good morning. I made too many again. Thought you might like some." "That's so kind, thank you," Rosa said, accepting the plate. Mrs. Patel was always sharing food, claiming she couldn't cook small portions since her children had moved away. "You're working today?" Mrs. Patel asked, noticing Rosa was still in her pajamas. "Night shift tonight." "I'm free until 6, Mrs. Patel nodded. Good, good. You work too hard. Always cleaning for those smart people. You're smart too, you know. I see all your books when I come over." Rosa smiled. Mrs. Patel was one of the few people who didn't look surprised when Rosa talked about her interest in mathematics. Maybe because Mrs. Patel herself had been an accountant back in India before retiring. After her neighbor left, Rosa returned to her table, uncovering her papers. She bit into a samosa as she studied the problem again. There was something there, just at the edge of her understanding, a pattern that felt familiar somehow. That evening, Rosa arrived at the mathematics building earlier than usual. The cleaning staff had their own small break room in the basement, and she wanted to use the computer there before starting her shift. The ancient desktop took forever to boot up, but it had internet access, something Rosa couldn't afford at home. She searched for articles about the Keller-Reeves conjecture, finding mostly news pieces about the prize money and technical papers she couldn't access without a university login. But there was enough information to help her understand the history of the problem and why it mattered. Studying on company time? Rosa quickly closed the browser and turned to see her supervisor, Bill, standing in the doorway with a knowing look. Unlike the professors, Bill had always been kind to her. "Just a few minutes," she said apologetically. Bill waved it off. "Don't worry about it. Say there's some big meeting happening upstairs. They ordered too much food as usual. Want to grab some before you start your rounds?" The department lounge was crowded with professors and graduate students clustered in small groups, all talking excitedly. Rosa followed Bill to the food table, keeping her head down and trying to be invisible as they filled their plates with leftover sandwiches and cookies. "It's definitely a blind alley," a loud voice was saying nearby. "Keller's original approach won't work here." Rosa recognized Dr. Hoffman, the department head, speaking to several colleagues. She slowed down, pretending to decide between 2 identical cookies while listening. "The symmetry property is the key," argued a woman Rosa didn't recognize. "If we could just find the right transformation." "We've been trying that for weeks," sighed another professor. "I'm beginning to think this thing is unprovable." "What about a completely different approach?" Rosa heard herself say before she could stop. The words seemed to come from someone else. The conversation halted. 6 pairs of eyes turned to look at her in surprise. Dr. Hoffman frowned. "Excuse me?" Rosa's heart pounded. She shouldn't have spoken. She knew better. But something pushed her forward. What if the pattern isn't where everyone's looking? What if it's in the spaces between? The silence that followed was excruciating. Then someone snickered. "And here I thought I'd heard every crackpot theory. said a young man with glasses, one of the graduate students. Next, she'll tell us the answer was in her horoscope. That's enough, Kevin, Dr. Hoffman said sharply, then turned to Rosa with a tight smile. Thank you for your input, but this is a rather technical discussion. I understand more than you think, Rosa said quietly. The woman professor looked at her with curiosity. Are you a student here? I don't think we've met. Before Rosa could answer, Bill stepped in. Come on, Rosa, we've got work to do. He gently guided her away from the group, adding over his shoulder, She's with the cleaning staff. The explanation was met with polite nods and immediate dismissal. The mathematicians returned to their discussion without another glance in her direction. As Rosa followed Bill out of the lounge, she heard Kevin stage whisper, Maybe she'll solve it with her mop. Laughter followed them into the hallway. Don't let them get to you, Bill said kindly. They're smart with books but dumb with people. Rosa nodded, but the sting remained. She'd faced this her whole life. People assuming she was simple because of her job, her accent, her lack of education. It shouldn't hurt anymore, but it did. That night, as she cleaned the empty offices and classrooms, Rosa thought about what she'd overheard. They were all looking at the problem the same way, following established approaches that weren't working. But what if there was another way? What if her outsider's perspective could see something they couldn't? In Professor Wilson's office, she found a fresh set of notes about the conjecture. As she carefully dusted around them, her eyes caught a detail everyone seemed to be missing, a pattern in the exception cases that followed, a rhythm she recognized from elsewhere. Rosa took out her small notebook from her uniform pocket and quickly jotted down some thoughts. She wasn't sure yet, but there was something there, something important. They might mock her, but numbers didn't care who solved them. Numbers didn't see job titles or degrees hanging on walls. Numbers only respected the truth, and Rosa was beginning to see the truth of this problem, even if no one would believe it coming from a cleaning lady. Rosa's small apartment was unusually bright on Sunday morning. She had pinned dozens of papers to her living room wall, creating a mosaic of equations, diagrams, and hastily scribbled notes. Sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating her work like a spotlight on a stage. She stood in the center of the room, arms crossed, studying the collection with tired eyes. 3 days had passed since she'd been mocked in the department lounge. 3 days of cleaning floors and emptying trash while her mind raced with numbers and patterns. 3 nights of minimal sleep as she worked on the Keller-Reeves conjecture, fueled by strong coffee and determination. Rosa reached out and touched one of the papers, a photocopy of Dr. Reeves's original article that she'd found in the recycling bin. The famous mathematician had laid out the problem so clearly, yet the solution remained hidden. Hundreds of brilliant minds around the world were searching for the answer, and here she was, a cleaning lady with a high school education, thinking she could find it. Maybe I'm crazy, she whispered to herself. The sound of children playing drifted through her open window, along with the smell of someone grilling in the courtyard of her apartment complex. Normal people doing normal things on a Sunday. Rosa couldn't remember the last time she'd done anything but work and study. Her phone rang, pulling her attention from the wall of mathematics. It was her sister, Lucia. Hey, are you coming to Dad's birthday lunch? Lucia asked without preamble. We're all waiting. Rosa pressed a hand to her forehead. That's today? Don't tell me you forgot, Lucia sighed. Again. I didn't forget, Rosa looked at the clock on her microwave. It was already noon. I lost track of time. I'll be there in 30 minutes, make it 20. The food's getting cold and Dad keeps asking where you are. Rosa hurried to get ready, changing out of her pajamas and trying to make herself presentable. As she brushed her hair, she caught her reflection in the bathroom mirror. Dark circles under her eyes, a distracted look on her face. She barely recognized herself. For a moment, she wondered what she was doing. Was she wasting her time on a problem she couldn't possibly solve? Everyone at the university would certainly think so. Maybe her family would too if they knew how she spent her nights. 25 minutes later, Rosa knocked on the door of her parents' small house. Her father, Miguel, opened it with a wide smile that immediately erased her doubts. There's my Rosalinda, he exclaimed, pulling her into a hug. At 68, he was still strong, though his hair had gone completely white. I was beginning to think you'd forgotten your old dad. Never, Rosa said, returning his embrace. Happy birthday, Papa. Inside, the house was warm and noisy with family. Lucia was there with her husband and their 2 children. Rosa's younger brother Antonio had come with his new girlfriend. Her mother bustled between the kitchen and dining room, bringing out more food than they could possibly eat. "You look tired," her mother said when Rosa entered the kitchen to help. "Working too many hours again?" "I'm fine, Mama," Rosa replied, taking a stack of plates from her mother's hands. "Just busy. All work and no play, it's not good. When are you going to find someone nice, settle down?" It was an old conversation, one Rosa had learned to deflect with a smile and a change of subject. "Let's celebrate Dad's birthday first, then worry about my love life." The afternoon passed pleasantly with food, stories, and laughter. For a few hours, Rosa let herself forget about the Keller-Reeves conjecture and the mockery at the university. Here with her family, she wasn't defined by her job or education. She was just Rosa, daughter, sister, aunt. After cake, her nephew Tomas tugged at her sleeve. "Auntie Rosa, help me with my homework?" "Mom says you're good at math." Rosa smiled and followed him to the living room where he had left his backpack. Thomas was 10 and struggling with fractions. As she sat beside him, explaining how to add fractions with different denominators, Rosa felt a familiar warmth spread through her chest. This was why she loved mathematics, the moment when confusion cleared and understanding dawned. "You'd make a good teacher," Lucia commented, watching from the doorway. Rosa looked up, surprised. "You think so? Better than me. I can't explain anything without getting frustrated." Lucia sat down across from them. "Why didn't you ever go back to school? You were always the smart one." The question caught Rosa off guard. She rarely talked about her abandoned dreams with her family. They knew she'd dropped out to help when their father got sick, but they didn't know how much that sacrifice still ached. "Life happened," Rosa said simply. "And now? Well, it's too late." "It's never too late," Lucia replied. "My friend Diane went back to college at 45. Now she's an accountant." Rosa nodded politely but didn't respond. Her sister couldn't understand what it was like to feel so far behind, to face the dismissive looks of educated people who saw only a cleaning lady. Going back to school meant years of struggle, expense she couldn't afford, and no guarantee of success. Besides, she didn't need a degree to work on mathematics. The numbers didn't care about her credentials. Later that evening, as Rosa prepared to leave, her father pulled her aside. "I have something for you," he said, pressing a small envelope into her hand. "Papa, you don't give gifts on your birthday," Rosa protested. "An old man can do what he wants," Miguel replied with a wink. "Open it at home." When Rosa returned to her apartment, she found her wall of mathematics waiting for her, patient and unsolved. She set her father's envelope on the table and stood before her work again, seeing it with fresh eyes after the break. Something about helping Thomas with fractions had sparked a new thought. The problem with the conjecture was that everyone was treating it as a whole. But what if it needed to be broken into parts like fractions with different denominators? Rosa grabbed a marker and began writing on a blank sheet of paper. The idea grew, taking shape under her hands. Hours passed unnoticed as she worked, following the thread of her insight through a maze of calculations. When she finally stopped, the first light of dawn was creeping through her window. Rosa rubbed her tired eyes and surveyed what she'd done. It wasn't a complete solution, not yet, but it was a new approach, one she hadn't seen in any of the papers she'd found. As she made coffee, Rosa remembered her father's envelope. She opened it to find $500 in cash and a note. "For whatever dream you're not telling us about. I see that look in your eyes. It's the same one you had when you were 16 and talked about becoming a mathematician. Love, Papa." Tears welled in Rosa's eyes. Her father had always believed in her, even when she'd stopped believing in herself. The next day, exhaustion clung to Rosa like a heavy coat as she pushed her cleaning cart through the mathematics building. She had managed only a few hours of sleep before her shift, but her mind was buzzing with the progress she'd made. As she cleaned the main lecture hall, she noticed a flyer pinned to the bulletin board. "Keller-Reeves Symposium," it announced, a special week-long event exploring new approaches to the famous conjecture. Guest speakers include Dr. Lena Reeves herself. Rosa moved closer, reading the details. The symposium would start tomorrow and run for 5 days. There would be lectures, workshops, and panel discussions, all focused on the very problem she was trying to solve. Her heart sank as she read the fine print. Open to department faculty, graduate students, and invited guests only. Of course, why would they allow a cleaning lady to attend? As she finished her shift that morning, Rosa passed by the department office. The secretary, Mrs. Winters, was already at her desk, organizing materials for the upcoming symposium. "Good morning, Rosa," Mrs. Winters greeted her. Unlike many in the department, the older woman always acknowledged the cleaning staff with a smile. "Good morning," Rosa replied, then hesitated. "Mrs. Winters, I was wondering, is there any way I could attend some of the symposium talks this week?" Mrs. Winters looked surprised. "You're interested in mathematics?" "Yes," Rosa said, straightening her shoulders. "Very much so, especially the Keller-Reeves conjecture." The secretary studied her for a moment, then lowered her voice. "Officially, it's restricted to department members and registered guests, but—" She glanced around to make sure no one was listening. "If you wanted to stand at the back of the lecture hall, I don't think anyone would notice. Especially for the larger sessions." Rosa felt a rush of gratitude. "Thank you. I would really appreciate that." "The opening lecture is tomorrow at 10 in the main hall," Mrs. Winters added. "Dr. Reeves herself will be speaking. It should be quite something." The next day, Rosa arrived at the university dressed not in her cleaning uniform, but in the nicest clothes she owned: black pants and a blue blouse she usually saved for special occasions. She had taken the day off, using some of her precious vacation time. The mathematics building was busier than usual, filled with visitors from other universities. Name tags hung from lanyards around everyone's necks. Rosa kept her head down as she made her way to the main lecture hall, feeling conspicuously out of place without a tag. The hall was nearly full, but as Mrs. Winters had suggested, there was standing room at the back. Rosa slipped in quietly and positioned herself behind the last row of seats, trying to look like she belonged. A hush fell over the room as department head Dr. Hoffman stepped up to the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great honor to welcome you to the first Keller-Reeves Symposium. For the next 5 days, the brightest minds in mathematics will come together to tackle one of the most challenging problems of our time." He continued with more introductions, but Rosa barely heard him. Her attention was fixed on the woman sitting in the front row, Dr. Lena Reeves, the mathematician who had formulated the conjecture that had consumed Rosa's thoughts for weeks. When Dr. Reeves took the stage, Rosa found herself holding her breath. The famous mathematician was younger than Rosa had expected, perhaps in her mid-50s with short gray hair and bright, intense eyes. "The beauty of mathematics," Dr. Reeves began, "is that it doesn't care who you are. It doesn't care about your background, your degrees, or your reputation. It only cares about the truth." Rosa felt a jolt of recognition. It was almost exactly what she had thought to herself the night she was mocked in the lounge. For the next hour, Dr. Reeves walked through the history and importance of the conjecture, explaining it with a clarity Rosa hadn't found in any of the papers she'd read. Then she outlined the major approaches that had been tried so far, and why each had failed. "We need fresh eyes," Dr. Reeves concluded. "We need someone who can see past the conventional wisdom and find a new path. Perhaps that person is in this room today." As the audience applauded, Rosa's mind raced. The approach she had started developing, breaking the problem into parts, wasn't among those Dr. Reeves had mentioned. Could it be that Rosa was actually onto something new? After the lecture, the attendees moved to the department lounge for coffee and discussion. Rosa followed at a distance, not intending to join but hoping to overhear some of the conversations. She was examining the equations written on a whiteboard when a voice spoke beside her. "What do you think?" Rosa turned to find Dr. Reeves herself standing there, coffee cup in hand, looking at her with curious eyes. "About your lecture?" Rosa asked, heart pounding. "It was wonderful. Very clear." "No, about this particular approach," Dr. Reeves said, gesturing to the whiteboard. "Thomson's method. Do you think it has merit?" Rosa stared at the famous mathematician, wondering if this was some kind of test. Did Dr. Reeves somehow know Rosa didn't belong here? But the woman's eyes held only genuine interest. She was actually asking for Rosa's opinion. Taking a deep breath, Rosa looked back at the equations. I think it's missing something important. If you look at the pattern of exceptions, there's a rhythm to them that this approach doesn't account for." Dr. Reeves tilted her head, studying Rosa with new intensity. "Interesting. I don't believe we've met. Are you visiting from another university? Before Rosa could answer, Dr. Hoffman appeared at Dr. Reeves's side. Lena, there's someone I'd like you to meet. He broke off when he noticed Rosa, his expression changing from welcoming to confused. Rosa, what are you doing here? Isn't today your day off? Dr. Reeves looked between them. You know each other? Rosa is part of our cleaning staff, Dr. Hoffman explained, his tone making it clear how odd he found her presence. I see, Dr. Reeves said, her expression unreadable. And she was just sharing some rather insightful observations about Thompson's approach to my conjecture. Dr. Hoffman's eyebrows shot up. Was she? Rosa felt her face burning with embarrassment. I should go, she murmured, turning to leave. Wait, Dr. Reeves called after her. I'd like to hear more about that rhythm you mentioned. But Rosa was already hurrying toward the exit, her momentary courage evaporating under Dr. Hoffman's surprised stare. Behind her, she could hear the department head saying, I apologize for the interruption. Rosa is, well, she's developed an unusual interest in our work. Outside the building, Rosa stopped to catch her breath. What had she been thinking? She didn't belong in that room talking to those people. She was just a cleaning lady with a hopeless dream. Yet as she walked home, her embarrassment gradually gave way to determination. Dr. Reeves had been interested in her idea, had called it insightful. And Dr. Reeves was right about one thing. Mathematics didn't care who Rosa was. The truth was the truth, no matter who discovered it. Rain pounded against the bus windows as Rosa stared out at the gray cityscape. The bus lurched forward through traffic, wipers squeaking across the glass in a steady rhythm. She hadn't been able to attend any more symposium sessions after her embarrassing encounter with Dr. Hoffman. Instead, she'd returned to her regular night shift, cleaning the same rooms where brilliant minds gathered during the day. 3 days had passed since she'd spoken with Dr. Reeves. 3 days of hearing excited chatter about new approaches to the conjecture, snippets of conversations as Rosa emptied trash bins and mopped floors. None of the approaches sounded promising. They were all variations on methods that had already failed. The bus hit a pothole, jolting Rosa from her thoughts. An elderly woman across the aisle lost her grip on her grocery bag, sending apples rolling across the floor. Rosa helped gather them, smiling at the woman's thanks. As she settled back into her seat, something clicked in Rosa's mind. The rhythmic swish of the wipers, the bumping of the bus, the rolling apples, patterns. Patterns within patterns, just like the exceptions, she whispered. A teenage boy sitting nearby gave her a strange look, but Rosa didn't notice. Her mind was racing, making connections she hadn't seen before. What if the exceptions to the conjecture weren't problems to be solved separately? What if they were clues pointing to a deeper pattern? Rosa fumbled in her bag for her notebook and a pen. She began scribbling frantically, drawing circles and arrows, crossing things out, starting again. By the time the bus reached her stop, she had filled 3 pages with calculations and diagrams. She barely noticed the rain soaking through her jacket as she ran from the bus stop to her apartment building. Once inside, she spread her notes on the kitchen table and continued working, expanding on the idea that had struck her on the bus. Hours passed. The rain stopped. Night fell. Rosa made coffee, drank it cold, made more. Her wall of mathematics gained new papers, new connections. Around midnight, she hit a roadblock, a calculation she couldn't quite resolve. I need more information, she muttered. She knew the university library had the books she needed, but as a cleaning staff member, she didn't have borrowing privileges. She could read in the library, but it would be closed until morning. Rosa glanced at her phone. It was nearly 1 a.m. Her shift would start in 4 hours. She should sleep, but her mind was too wired, too full of numbers and patterns. Instead, she did something she'd never done before. She called in sick. You never take sick days, Bill said, concern evident in his voice. Are you okay? Just a bad cold, Rosa lied, feeling guilty. I should be back tomorrow. After hanging up, she set an alarm for 7 a.m. when the library opened and lay down on her couch, notebook clutched to her chest. She didn't expect to sleep, but exhaustion overtook her. Both mathematicians looked at her with surprise. Dr. Hoffman frowned slightly. Rosa, is something wrong? No, sir. She took a deep breath. I wanted to give this to Dr. Reeves. She pulled the second copy of her proof from her bag and held it out. Dr. Reeves stood and took the document, curiosity evident on her face. What is this? A solution to your conjecture, Rosa said quietly. At least I think it is. Dr. Hoffman's eyebrows shot up. A solution, you? Dr. Reeves gave him a sharp look, then turned back to Rosa with a kinder expression. Thank you, Rosa. I remember our conversation at the symposium. Your insight about the rhythm of exceptions was intriguing. That's the foundation of my approach, Rosa explained. The exceptions form their own pattern, which can be mapped back to the main conjecture through a specific transformation. Dr. Reeves nodded thoughtfully. An interesting idea. I'll read this carefully. Thank you, Rosa said, relief washing over her. At least her work would be seen, evaluated on its merits rather than dismissed because of who she was. As Rosa turned to leave, Dr. Hoffman cleared his throat. Rosa, perhaps it would be best if you focused on your actual job while at work. The words stung, but Rosa merely nodded and left the office, closing the door behind her. She had done what she came to do. Now it was up to the mathematicians to judge her work. As she pushed her cleaning cart down the hallway, Rosa felt lighter than she had in weeks. Whether they accepted her solution or not, she knew the truth. She had solved the unsolvable problem, and no one could take that away from her. Rosa didn't sleep that night. After finishing her shift, she walked home through the quiet streets wondering what would happen next. Would Dr. Chen or Dr. Reeves even read her proof? Would they understand her approach? Or would they dismiss it without serious consideration? By morning, Rosa was exhausted but too anxious to rest. She made strong coffee and sat by her window, watching the neighborhood come to life. Children walked to school, people hurried to work, a mail carrier made his rounds, normal life continuing while Rosa's world hung in suspense. Her phone rang shortly after 9. It was a number she didn't recognize. Hello? She answered cautiously. Rosa Mendez. The voice was crisp, professional. This is Linda Winters, Dr. Hoffman's secretary. Dr. Hoffman would like to see you in his office this afternoon at 2 o'clock. Can you make it? Rosa's heart jumped. Yes, of course. Good, please come to the main office when you arrive. The call ended before Rosa could ask any questions. She stared at her phone, mind racing. Why did Dr. Hoffman want to see her? Had they read her proof already? Was this good news or bad? Rosa spent the next few hours in a state of nervous anticipation. She showered, washed her hair, and put on her nicest outfit. Dark blue pants and a cream-colored blouse. Not exactly professional attire, but the best she had. She arrived at the mathematics building 30 minutes early, her stomach in knots. The main office was busy with the usual end of symposium activities. Mrs. Winters looked up from her desk and gave Rosa a small smile. You're early. You can wait in the conference room down the hall. I'll let Dr. Hoffman know you're here. The conference room was empty except for a long table surrounded by chairs. On the whiteboard, someone had written, Keller Reeves final session, 4 p.m. Rosa paced nervously, checking her reflection in the window, straightening her blouse, tucking her hair behind her ears. At exactly 2 o'clock, the door opened. Rosa turned, expecting Dr. Hoffman, but instead found herself facing Dr. Reeves, Dr. Chen, and an older man she recognized as Thomas Keller from the bus. Ms. Mendez, Dr. Reeves said with a smile. Thank you for coming. Rosa nodded, suddenly unable to speak. Where was Dr. Hoffman? Why were all these important mathematicians here? Dr. Reeves gestured to the table. Please sit down. We have much to discuss. Rosa sat, hands folded tightly in her lap to hide their trembling. The 3 mathematicians took seats across from her. I believe you've met Dr. Chen, Dr. Reeves continued. And perhaps Dr. Keller as well. On the bus, Dr. Keller confirmed with a friendly nod. Though I didn't realize the significance of our conversation at the time. Dr. Reeves placed a familiar document on the table, Rosa's proof, now marked with notes and comments in the margins. We've all read your work, Ms. Mendez, quite thoroughly. In fact, Rosa looked from one face to another, trying to gauge their reactions. Dr. Chen seemed thoughtful, Dr. Keller curious, but Dr. Reeves's expression was unreadable. And, Rosa finally managed to ask, Dr. Reeves leaned forward. Your approach is unlike anything we've seen. The way you identified the pattern within the exceptions and created a transformation function to map them back to the main conjecture. She shook her head slightly. It's extraordinarily creative. Thank you, Rosa said cautiously, waiting for the but that surely would follow. Instead, Dr. Reeves smiled. "We believe your solution is correct, Ms. Mendez." The words hung in the air. Rosa stared at her, not quite processing what she'd heard. "Correct? You mean you've solved the Keller-Reeves conjecture," Dr. Chen confirmed. "We've verified your proof independently, and while there are some notational issues to clean up, the mathematical logic is sound." "We're quite impressed," Dr. Keller added. "Especially given your unusual background." Rosa felt lightheaded. They believed her. They had verified her work. She hadn't been crazy to think she could solve it. "Where did you learn mathematics at this level?" Dr. Reeves asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. Rosa told them her story, dropping out of high school to support her family, her lifelong love of patterns and numbers, how she'd educated herself through discarded papers and borrowed books, how she'd been cleaning the mathematics department for 7 years, absorbing knowledge wherever she could find it. When she finished, there was a moment of silence. "Remarkable," Dr. Keller said finally, "simply remarkable." "We'd like to present your solution at the final symposium session today," Dr. Reeves said. "With your permission, of course. You would be properly credited as the sole author of the proof." Rosa's breath caught. "You want me to present it?" The three mathematicians exchanged glances. "Well, we thought perhaps Dr. Chen could present it since he's been working with you," Dr. Reeves said carefully. "But if you'd prefer to do it yourself?" "No," Rosa said quickly, imagining standing before a room full of PhDs and professors. "No, Dr. Chen would be better. I'm not good at public speaking." Dr. Chen nodded. "I would be honored to present your work, Rosa, but I will make it absolutely clear that the solution is entirely yours." "There's one more thing," Dr. Reeves added. "The Preston Foundation grant for solving the conjecture. It's quite substantial, $100,000. Rosa's eyes widened. More money than she'd ever imagined having. "It will be awarded to you, of course," Dr. Reeves continued. "The Foundation's rules are clear. The grant goes to whoever solves the problem regardless of academic affiliation." Tears welled in Rosa's eyes. With that money, she could go back to school. She could get the education she'd always wanted. She could help her family. "Thank you," she whispered. Dr. Reeves smiled warmly. "No, Ms. Mendez, thank you. You've reminded us all that brilliant minds can be found anywhere, not just in universities and research institutions." The door opened, and Dr. Hoffman entered, looking slightly harried. "Sorry I'm late. Did I miss anything?" "Just confirming what we discussed earlier," Dr. Reeves said smoothly. "Ms. Mendez has agreed to let Dr. Chen present her solution at the final session, with full credit to her as the author." Dr. Hoffman's smile seemed forced. "Excellent. Well, Ms. Mendez, this is quite an achievement for someone in your position." Rosa nodded, noting his careful choice of words. She suspected Dr. Hoffman was not entirely pleased that a member of his cleaning staff had solved the famous problem when his department's best minds had failed. "We should prepare for the presentation," Dr. Chen said, standing. "Rosa, would you like to help me organize the key points?" "Yes, I'd like that," Rosa replied, grateful for his inclusion. As they left the conference room, Dr. Reeves fell into step beside Rosa. "There will be some who question your achievement," she said quietly. "Some who won't believe that you, a cleaning lady without formal education, could have solved this problem." Rosa nodded. She had expected as much. "Let them doubt," Dr. Reeves continued. "The math speaks for itself, and in mathematics that's all that matters." The final session of the symposium was held in the largest lecture hall, packed with mathematicians from around the world. Rosa sat in the back row trying to be inconspicuous as Dr. Hoffman opened the session. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have an unexpected development. Dr. Chen will now present what appears to be a solution to the Keller-Reeves conjecture." A murmur ran through the crowd. Dr. Chen took the stage, looking calm and collected. "Thank you, Dr. Hoffman. Before I begin, I want to make one thing absolutely clear. I am not the author of this solution. I am merely presenting it on behalf of its creator, Ms. Rosa Mendez." He gestured toward the back of the hall. Hundreds of heads turned, searching for the unfamiliar name. Rosa felt her face grow hot as eyes found her, curious and skeptical. "For those who don't know," Dr. Chen continued, "Ms. Mendez works as a member of the cleaning staff here at the university. She has no formal mathematical training beyond high school. And yet she has solved a problem that has stumped the world's leading mathematicians for years. The murmuring grew louder. Rosa caught fragments of disbelief, confusion, even anger from some. Impossible, someone near her muttered. Must be a mistake, said another. Dr. Chen raised his hands for silence. I understand your skepticism. I shared it initially, but I have verified this proof myself, as have Dr. Reeves and Dr. Keller. It is mathematically sound. He turned to the whiteboard and began to outline Rosa's approach. With each step, the room grew quieter as the brilliance of the solution became apparent. Dr. Chen explained how Rosa had identified the pattern within the exceptions, how she had developed a transformation function to map them back to the main conjecture, and how this created a pathway to a complete proof. When he finished, there was a moment of stunned silence. Then Dr. Reeves stood up from the front row. As the person who formulated this conjecture, I confirm that Ms. Mendez's solution is correct. The Keller-Reeves conjecture has been solved. The room erupted in a mix of applause, questions, and continued disbelief. Dr. Chen fielded the technical questions expertly, always crediting Rosa for each insight. Dr. Reeves and Dr. Keller added their endorsements, explaining why they were convinced of the proof's validity. Still, the skepticism persisted. A tall, gray-haired man stood up. This is absurd. How could someone with no formal training solve this problem? She must have stolen the approach from somewhere. Before Dr. Chen could respond, another voice cut in, Dr. Hoffman's. To Rosa's surprise, the department head looked angry. That accusation is both unfounded and offensive. Professor Walsh, Ms. Mendez has worked in our department for 7 years. Many of us, myself included, have underestimated her. We've talked freely around her, assuming she couldn't possibly understand our work. We've discarded papers that she later studied. We've written on whiteboards that she's carefully photographed before cleaning. He paused, looking around the room. In short, we gave her a 7-year education in advanced mathematics without even realizing it. And she had the brilliance to put it all together in a way none of us could. I suggest we show some humility and recognize genuine talent when we see it, regardless of its source. The room fell silent. Rosa stared at Dr. Hoffman in shock. This was the last defense she had expected. Dr. Reeves took the microphone. I believe the math speaks for itself. But if you're still unconvinced, Ms. Mendez will be available to discuss her approach in detail. I'm sure she can answer any questions about how she developed this solution. All eyes turned to Rosa again. This time, instead of shrinking in her seat, she straightened her shoulders and nodded. She knew her work was solid. She knew she could defend it. As the session ended, people began to approach her, some genuinely curious, others clearly intent on finding flaws in her work. Rosa answered each question patiently, explaining her thinking, clarifying her approach. With each explanation, the skepticism in their eyes gradually gave way to reluctant respect. One young graduate student lingered after others had moved away. Did you really figure this out while cleaning floors? She asked, something like wonder in her voice. Rosa smiled. Ideas can come from anywhere. Sometimes the best thinking happens while doing ordinary things. The student nodded thoughtfully. They told me I wasn't good enough for theoretical mathematics, that I should stick to applied work. And what do you think? Rosa asked. I think I need to trust myself more, the student replied. Thank you, Ms. Mendez. As people filed out of the lecture hall, Dr. Chen approached Rosa. You handled that remarkably well. I was terrified, Rosa admitted. It didn't show. He hesitated. There's going to be a reception tonight for the symposium participants. You should come. As the solver of the Keller-Reeves conjecture, you're the guest of honor. Rosa thought of the small apartment waiting for her, the wall of mathematics that had been her only audience for so long. Tonight, for the first time, she would step fully into this world that had fascinated her from a distance. I'll be there, she said. As she left the building, Rosa took out her phone and called her father. Papa, remember that dream I wasn't telling you about? I think it just came true. 6 months had passed since the day Rosa Mendez shocked the mathematics world. The morning sun streamed through the windows of her new apartment as she sipped coffee and reviewed her lecture notes. The space was modest but far nicer than her old place, with large windows, bookshelves filled with mathematics texts, and a proper desk where she could work. The Preston Foundation grant had changed her life in practical ways. She'd moved to this better apartment, helped her parents pay off their mortgage, and set aside money for her nephew Thomas's college fund. But the biggest change wasn't financial. It was in how people saw her and how she saw herself. Rosa checked her watch. Her first class at the university would begin in 2 hours, not as a student but as a teacher. The phone rang. It was Dr. Chen. "Morning, Rosa. Ready for the big day?" "As ready as I'll ever be," she replied, trying to keep the nervousness from her voice. "You'll be great. Just remember, those students are there because they want to learn from you. Your unique perspective is exactly what makes you valuable." After Rosa's solution to the Keller-Reeves conjecture had been verified and published, universities across the country had reached out with offers, teaching positions, research opportunities, even full scholarships if she wanted to pursue a formal degree. The attention had been overwhelming. In the end, she'd chosen to stay at the same university where she'd worked as a cleaner. Dr. Reeves had personally championed the creation of a special position for her, visiting scholar in mathematics, while Rosa took night classes to finally earn her bachelor's degree. "Thanks for the encouragement," Rosa told Dr. Chen, "and for everything else. I wouldn't be here without your help." "I just gave you access to some papers," he said modestly. "You did the hard part." After they hung up, Rosa returned to her notes. Today's lecture was an introduction to pattern recognition in mathematical problems, her specialty. She'd designed the course herself, drawing on her unconventional learning journey. As she reviewed her material, Rosa thought about how much had changed. 6 months ago, she'd been invisible to most of the people in the mathematics department. Now those same people sought her out, asked for her input, invited her to seminars and conferences. Not everyone had come around, of course. There were still those who viewed her with suspicion or resentment, who whispered that her solution must have been a fluke or that she must have had secret help. But they were becoming fewer as Rosa continued to prove herself through her work and publications. The doorbell rang, interrupting her thoughts. Rosa opened the door to find her sister Lucia holding a small gift bag. "I know you said not to make a big deal about today," Lucia said, stepping inside, "but I couldn't resist bringing you a little something." Rosa took the bag and pulled out a beautiful leather-bound notebook with her initials embossed on the cover. "For all your brilliant ideas," Lucia explained. "Much better than those cheap notebooks you used to buy." Rosa hugged her sister tightly. "It's perfect." "Thank you." Lucia looked around the apartment approvingly. "I still can't believe my big sister is a famous mathematician now. Remember when we were kids and you used to help me with my math homework? You'd always find these weird shortcuts that made no sense to me but somehow worked." Rosa smiled at the memory. "I think that's when I first realized I saw patterns differently than other people." "Well, now you get to teach those shortcuts to college students." "Who would have thought?" An hour later, Rosa stood in front of her bathroom mirror, adjusting her new blazer. She'd never owned clothes like this before. Professional attire for a professional position. Sometimes when she caught her reflection, she still did a double take, as if expecting to see herself in her old cleaning uniform. Her phone buzzed with a text from her father. "Proud of you, Rosalinda. You'll shine today." With her father's words warming her heart, Rosa gathered her materials and headed to campus. As she walked the familiar paths, now as a teacher rather than a cleaner, she nodded to groundskeepers and maintenance staff who called out greetings. They had been among the first to celebrate her success, proud to see one of their own recognized for her brilliance. The mathematics building looked different in daylight. Rosa had spent so many years here during night shifts that the daytime bustle still felt strange. Students hurried to classes, professors chatted in hallways, department assistants rushed about with papers and coffee. Rosa made her way to the lecture hall where her class would meet. It was still empty, with 20 minutes to go before students would arrive. She set up her notes at the podium, wrote her name on the board, and then stood back, taking a deep breath. "Professor Mendez," came a voice from the doorway. "It suits you." Rosa turned to see Dr. Reeves smiling at her. "I'm not a professor yet," Rosa reminded her. "Just a visiting scholar." "A technicality," Dr. Reeves said, waving her hand dismissively. "You've earned your place here regardless of the title." The famous mathematician had become something of a mentor to Rosa over the past months. It was Dr. Reeves who had pushed hardest for Rosa's position, who had helped design a flexible program that would allow Rosa to teach while continuing her own education. I wanted to wish you luck before your first class, Dr. Reeves continued, though I doubt you'll need it. Your story has spread across campus. This class filled up within hours of being announced. Because they're curious about the cleaning lady who solved an impossible problem, Rosa said with a hint of worry. What if I disappoint them? You won't, Dr. Reeves said confidently. Just teach them the way you taught yourself, with creativity, persistence, and a fresh perspective. That's what they're here for. After Dr. Reeves left, students began to file in. Soon the lecture hall was full, with people even sitting on the steps. Rosa saw faces filled with curiosity, excitement, and yes, some skepticism too. She recognized the mix of emotions well. Good morning, Rosa began, her voice steadier than she'd expected. I'm Rosa Mendez, and this is pattern recognition in mathematical problem solving. She paused, looking out at the sea of faces. Before we dive into the material, I want to address the elephant in the room. Yes, I'm the person who solved the Keller-Reeves conjecture while working as a member of the cleaning staff. No, I don't have a PhD. Until recently, I didn't even have a college degree. Murmurs rippled through the room. Rosa continued, I'm telling you this not to brag, but to make a point that will be central to this course. Sometimes the most valuable insights come from unexpected places and unusual perspectives. That's what I want to teach you, how to look at problems differently, how to see patterns others might miss. The room grew quiet as students leaned forward, engaged. Rosa felt something shift inside her, confidence replacing nervousness, purpose replacing doubt. Let's start with a problem, she said, turning to write on the board. One that can be solved in multiple ways, but is particularly elegant when approached through pattern recognition. For the next hour, Rosa led her class through an exploration of mathematical patterns, showing them how to find hidden structures in seemingly complex problems. The students were responsive, asking thoughtful questions and offering their own insights. By the end of the session, the initial curiosity about Rosa's unusual background had been replaced by genuine interest in her teaching. As students filed out, several lingered to ask questions. One young woman waited until the others had gone. Ms. Mendez, she said hesitantly, I wanted to thank you. I'm a first-generation college student, and sometimes I feel like I don't belong here. Seeing you stand up there today, it meant a lot. Rosa smiled, remembering the graduate student who had approached her after the symposium. What's your name? Gabriella, the student replied. Well, Gabriella, let me tell you something I had to learn the hard way. You belong wherever your mind takes you. Don't let anyone tell you differently. After her class, Rosa headed to the department office to check her faculty mailbox, another novelty that still made her smile. Mrs. Winters waved her over. Rosa, there's someone waiting to see you. In the conference room. Rosa found Dr. Hoffman sitting at the table reviewing papers. He looked up when she entered. Ms. Mendez, or should I say Professor Mendez now, he said, standing. Just Rosa's fine, she replied. Their relationship had remained somewhat awkward, despite his surprising defense of her at the symposium. Rosa, then. He gestured for her to sit. I wanted to discuss a new program we're considering. An outreach initiative for non-traditional students with aptitude in mathematics. Rosa sat down, intrigued. What kind of program? Scholarships, mentoring, special courses designed for people who might not have followed the usual academic path. People working full-time jobs or who left school early or who are self-taught. Dr. Hoffman leaned forward. People like you, and you want my input? More than that. We'd like to name it after you, the Rosa Mendez Initiative for Non-Traditional Mathematical Talent, and we'd like you to help design it. Rosa was speechless. Dr. Hoffman continued, Your achievement has forced many of us, myself included, to reconsider our assumptions about where mathematical talent can be found. This program would help ensure that other brilliant minds don't go unrecognized simply because they don't fit the traditional mold. As the implications sank in, Rosa felt tears threatening. She blinked them back. I would be honored to help with this program. Excellent. We'll set up a committee meeting next week to begin planning. Dr. Hoffman gathered his papers and stood. At the door he paused. And Rosa, I owe you an apology. I was dismissive of you, even after seeing evidence of your abilities. I was wrong and I'm sorry. After he left, Rosa sat alone in the conference room, overwhelmed by the day's events. From her first class to this unexpected apology and opportunity, it was almost too much to process. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from Bill, her old supervisor from the cleaning staff. Heard your class was a hit. The crew is all proud of you. Don't forget us little people now that you're famous. Rosa smiled and texted back, Never. Drinks this Friday? My treat. That evening, Rosa returned to her apartment and hung her blazer carefully in the closet. Next to it was her old cleaning uniform, which she had kept as a reminder of where she'd come from. She ran her fingers over the rough fabric, remembering the years of invisible work, of studying in secret, of being overlooked and underestimated. She moved to her desk and opened the leather notebook Lucia had given her. On the first page, she wrote, Ideas for the Rosa Mendez Initiative. Below that, she began listing ways to identify and support hidden mathematical talent in community colleges, workplaces, even among the university's own staff. As night fell, Rosa looked out her window at the campus lights in the distance. 6 months ago, she had been cleaning those buildings in the dark. Now she was helping to transform them from within. The path hadn't been easy, and there were still challenges ahead. Some people would always doubt her, would always see her as an anomaly rather than recognize that there were likely many others like her. Brilliant minds hidden in plain sight. But Rosa was no longer invisible. And because of her, perhaps others wouldn't have to be either. She returned to her notebook and continued writing, her ideas flowing freely. After all, she had solved an impossible mathematical problem. Creating a pathway for others like her seemed simple by comparison. Mathematics didn't care who you were, Dr. Reeves had said. It only cared about the truth. And the truth was, genius could be found anywhere, even pushing a cleaning cart through empty hallways at midnight, dreaming of patterns and possibilities.